Today's tech news moves fast, but understanding it shouldn't be hard. That's why Snarful Solutions Group brings you Connecting the Dots, where we break down what's happening in tech and why it matters to you. Now, let's dive in with your hosts.
Imagine waking up to find out that the smartest intern in your office now works for like 14 cents a day, never sleeps, and has a photographic memory of literally every document your company has ever produced.
Right, which sounds totally crazy.
It sounds like science fiction, but as of this morning, it's the new reality of the global economy. I'm Alex.
And I'm Morgan.
And it is Friday, April 24th, 2026. Welcome, everyone, to today's deep dive right here on Connecting the Dots, brought to you by Snarful Solutions Group in Sacramento, California.
So glad you're here with us.
We've got a really dense, highly disruptive Morningstar report for you today, but first, let's get a quick snapshot of the world outside your window and the numbers on your screens.
Yeah, so looking out over Sacramento overnight, It's mostly cloudy, sitting at a very calm 47 degrees Fahrenheit with just, a gentle 2-mile-per-hour wind.
Sounds nice.
Very peaceful on the local front, yeah.
That piece is highly localized, though. I mean, if you zoom out and look at the national map, there are currently 378 active weather alerts across the country.
Wow.
Yeah, with 141 of those over land.
Yeah.
It's a massive contrast, right? The calm 47 degrees here versus the 378 alerts nationwide. It kind of feels like sitting in the eye of a hurricane.
It really does.
And honestly, that atmospheric contrast is, it's the perfect metaphor for the tech world today. On the surface, if you're just, checking your email or your calendar, everything feels totally normal.
Right, business as usual.
Exactly. But underneath, there are massive storms brewing that are actively reshaping how human beings interact with computers.
And the markets are definitely feeling some of that atmospheric pressure as they try to price in these technological shifts.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's look at Thursday's close. So the Dow Jones ended the day at 49,310.32, which is just a hair, 0.05%.
Barely moving. And the S&P 500 closed down slightly at 7,108.40, which is a drop of 0.15%. Meanwhile, looking at crypto this Friday morning, Bitcoin is sitting at 78,104.72. That's down about 0.22% for the day. But, the broader weekly trend shows it up nearly 6% since Monday.
Investors are clearly just holding their breath right now. There's a lot of capital waiting on the sidelines to see how this next generation of artificial intelligence is really going to filter through the broader economy.
Which brings us to the core of today's tech report. DeepSeek, the AI lab that essentially turned the industry upside down a year ago, just released the preview versions of their new V4 models.
Huge news.
It's sending absolute shockwaves through Silicon Valley, Wall Street, and honestly, global hardware supply chains.
Yeah, the implications touch literally everything from the fundamental cost of software development to the geopolitical balance of power in microchip manufacturing.
It's a lot to take in. Okay, let's unpack this. But before we get into the massive implications of DeepSeek V4, we have a quick word from our sponsor.
Today's episode is brought to you by Strong Coffee, the premium instant coffee that tastes like a traditional brew, but is packed with 15 grams of protein, MCTs, and adaptogens like ashwagandha. Get clean, sustained energy without the jitters. Use promo code SNARFL for 20% off at strongcoffeecompany.com.
All right, let's look closer at what actually dropped today. DeepSeek released 2 preview models.
Very good, yeah.
The heavyweight is DeepSeek V4 Pro, which boasts a staggering 1.6 trillion total parameters. Then there's the smaller, faster version V4 Flash with 284 billion parameters.
Right.
Both models feature what they call a 1 million token context window. Now, just pausing here, 1.6 trillion parameters sounds less like a software program and more like, a national economy.
It's an unfathomable number.
How does a computer even load something that massive without catching fire?
Well, the secret is that it doesn't load all of them at once.
Okay.
The architecture here relies on a mechanism called mixture of experts.
Okay.
So out of those 1.6 trillion parameters in the Pro model, only 49 billion are active at any given time.
Wait, only 49 billion?
Yeah, just a fraction. And with the Flash model, out of 284 billion, only 13 billion are active.
Okay, I need a translation for that. What does it actually mean for a parameter to be inactive?
So think of a parameter as a tiny, specialized piece of knowledge, or like a specific connection between ideas. If we use a corporate analogy, imagine a gigantic sprawling global enterprise with 1.6 trillion employees.
That's a big HR department.
Right. But if you need a new logo designed, you don't call an all-hands meeting and ask all 1.6 trillion people for their input.
No, that would be chaos.
Exactly. It would paralyze the company and cost an absolute fortune in hourly wages. Instead, you just route the request to the specific marketing and design department, the 49 billion specialists who actually know how to do that specific job.
And the rest of them?
The rest of the company stays asleep.
Oh, wow. So you have the latent brainpower of the massive company, but the real-time computing cost of just the small specialized team you actually need for that specific second.
Precisely. It routes the prompt through the neural network, only activating the pathways that are relevant to the user's request.
Okay, that makes the efficiency make a lot of sense. Let's talk about the memory side of this, though. The 1 million token context window.
Yeah, that's huge.
Because a token is basically a chunk of a word. 1 million tokens is a lot of words. Is that like the AI being able to hold an entire epic fantasy book series in its head at once, without forgetting what happened to a minor character back in Chapter 1?
Yeah, it's equivalent to handing the AI a giant stack of novels, plus several thick financial reports and a massive code base, and it can actively reference all of it simultaneously.
It doesn't lose the plot halfway through a long conversation.
Exactly. And the benchmark testing shows this V4 Pro model beats every single other open source model currently available in math, STEM, and coding tasks.
I do want to clarify one thing, though, because our sources are pretty specific here. It's beating the open source models.
Right, open source.
But when you stack it up against the absolute top-tier, closed-source frontier models, like, OpenAI's GPT 5.4 or Google's Gemini 3.1 Pro, it's not taking the crown.
No, it's not. DeepSeek's own documentation openly admits they are trailing those absolute bleeding-edge models by about 3 to 6 months in terms of pure, complex reasoning and broad world knowledge.
Which, 3 to 6 months in the AI world is practically a lifetime.
Oh, it really is.
But it's still an incredibly narrow gap historically. I'm fascinated by how they manage the reasoning process itself, too. The documentation mentions 3 distinct modes: non-think, think high, and think max. Why wouldn't I just want my AI to think at the maximum level all the time?
Because thinking consumes compute, and compute equals time and, more importantly, money.
Right.
Non-think is for fast, intuitive responses, like asking it to reformat an email or just summarize a short article. It just relies on its pre-trained reflexes.
Makes sense.
Think high introduces a conscious logical analysis loop for more complex planning, like writing a multi-step project proposal.
And think max.
Think max pushes the AI's reasoning capabilities to the absolute limit. It might spend minutes churning through possibilities, verifying its own logic, and exploring dead ends before it finally gives you an answer to a highly complex math or coding problem.
It's a literal slider for how hard you want the machine to concentrate.
Exactly.
But here is the part I'm kind of struggling with. If I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, okay, a Chinese AI company released a very good model. It's highly efficient. It has massive memory, but it's still technically trailing the American tech giants by a few months.
Right.
Why is this dominating the global news cycle today? Why do we care so much about the runner-up?
The answer comes down to the price tag. The disruption isn't about being the absolute smartest model out there. It's about the cost of intelligence plummeting to near zero.
Okay.
DeepSeek V4 Pro costs $1.74 per million input tokens. That is incredibly cheap for a frontier class model.
Very cheap.
But the V4 Flash model is a staggeringly low 14 cents per million input tokens.
14 cents.
14 cents. That makes it the absolute cheapest in its class, severely undercutting OpenAI's smallest model, GPT 5.4 Nano, which currently sits at 20 cents.
Let's contextualize that 14 cents, because for the average professional sending, a few prompts a day, the difference between 20 cents and 14 cents sounds like literal pocket change.
Yeah.
Who cares if my prompt costs a fraction of a penny less?
A human typing prompts into a chat window won't notice the difference at all. But we are moving away from that chatbot paradigm. The industry is shifting entirely toward AI agents.
Okay, let's unpack this concept of an agent. An agent isn't just a search engine that talks back to you. An agent is a system that does work for you in the background.
Exactly.
If I ask an AI agent to build a basic app, it doesn't just instantly spit out a finished product. It enters a loop.
Right, it iterates.
It writes the first draft of the code, then it reads its own code, catches a syntax error, rewrites it, tests it again, realizes the logic is broken, searches for a solution, and fixes it.
And every single time it talks to itself in that loop, it is generating and consuming tokens.
Right.
It might iterate 50 or 100 times before it ever shows you the final result. That is an agentic workflow, and it burns through massive amounts of computing power.
Which perfectly explains the recent news about GitHub Copilot. Our sources note they actually had to restrict their individual plans recently because users were deploying these agents to do complex parallel tasks, and the compute costs were just bankrupting the service.
Yeah, the AI was thinking too much in the background.
Literally thinking them out of business.
Exactly. When an agent loops 1,000 times to solve a single problem, a difference of a few cents per million tokens suddenly scales into millions of dollars in overhead for a tech company.
It's like the cost of electricity suddenly dropping from standard rates down to fractions of a penny.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
You just stop worrying about leaving the lights on. In this case, you stop worrying about leaving your AI agents running 24/7. You can just let them grind away at iterating code, organizing schedules, and analyzing data all day and night because the underlying electricity costs almost nothing.
And the mechanism making this cheap electricity possible goes back to a severe reduction in FLOPs.
FLOPs?
Yeah, FLOP stands for floating point operations per second. It's essentially the raw number of mathematical calculations the computer has to perform.
Okay.
DeepSeek managed to engineer V4 Pro so that it requires only 27% of the FLOPs of their previous V3.2 model when handling those massive million-token context tasks.
Wait, they cut the required math by over 70%?
They figured out how to get the same exact output with vastly fewer calculations.
That's what?
And fewer calculations mean the physical servers in the data center draw less electricity, generate less heat, and require less cooling.
Yeah.
The entire physical infrastructure required to run the model shrinks.
Which brings us nicely to the physical infrastructure, the third major thread in today's report, the geopolitics of hardware.
All right, this is where it gets complicated.
Because there is a massive contradiction here that is currently making Wall Street lose its mind. To train a 1.6 trillion parameter model, even a highly efficient one, requires an unbelievable amount of specialized hardware. We're talking about massive clusters of top-tier AI chips.
Yeah, and the United States has strict export controls in place specifically designed to prevent the most advanced AI chips, like the high-end hardware from companies like NVIDIA from reaching China.
Right.
The whole goal of those sanctions is to physically starve the computing clusters needed to train models exactly like this one.
So I'm looking at these numbers and I'm genuinely confused. If you need a warehouse of specialized restricted chips to train 1.6 trillion parameters, and the US blocked the good stuff from going to China, how does DeepSeek even exist?
It's $1 million question.
There were rumors they somehow smuggled in restricted NVIDIA Blackwell chips, but the latest reporting completely pivots away from that.
Right, well, Huawei officially stepped into the spotlight this morning.
Oh, wow.
They announced that their domestic AI computing cluster, which is powered entirely by their own proprietary Ascend 950 processors, provides full native support for running these new DeepSeek V4 models.
Okay, we need to look at this impartially because the geopolitical fallout here is incredibly complex. From the Western perspective, there are immediate national security concerns.
Absolutely.
DeepSeek was already banned from being used on U.S. federal devices and government networks over data privacy and security fears. And South Korea recently paused downloads of the DeepSeek app for similar reasons.
Those are the stated security policies from allied governments. But the financial markets are telling a very specific, very different story about how investors interpret the Huawei announcement.
How so?
When the news broke that Huawei chips were natively running V4, Chinese domestic chip makers saw a massive surge. SMIC, which is a major semiconductor manufacturer in China, spiked by 10% almost immediately.
I'm looking at that SMIC spike, but at the exact same time, Chinese AI application companies, like the companies building software on top of AI, actually saw their stock drop.
Yeah, they did.
That seems completely backward to me. If domestic AI just became incredibly cheap and powerful, shouldn't the app companies be thrilled? Why is Wall Street punishing the software guys while rewarding the chip makers?
It really comes down to commoditization and the threat of a brutal price war. The surge in domestic chip stocks like SMIC suggests investors believe the hardware bottleneck has been broken.
Okay.
They are pricing in the reality that China has successfully built its own self-sufficient AI hardware ecosystem, essentially bypassing the U.S. sanctions through domestic innovation.
Huh.
So the chip makers now have a captive, booming market.
And the software companies.
Well, the drop in AI application companies reflects the reality that if intelligence is now virtually free, the barrier to entry for building an AI app just fell to zero.
Ah, I see.
If anyone can spin up a hyper-intelligent agent for pennies, the existing software companies no longer have a protective moat. Wall Street is anticipating a race to the bottom for software pricing.
A race to the bottom for software, but a gold rush for the foundational players. Our report mentions major tech conglomerates like Tencent and Alibaba are now looking to invest heavily in DeepSeek, pushing its valuation to over $20 billion.
$20 billion for a lab that just proved you can build and run frontier-level artificial intelligence without relying on the traditional Western-dominated hardware pipeline.
It's wild.
It is a fundamental restructuring of the global tech stack, from the silicon forged in the foundries all the way up to the conversational agent running on your phone.
Before we wrap up this look at the new landscape, a quick thanks to Old Glory, an iconic music and sports fan merch store, perfect for the techie in your life. Use promo code SNARFL for 15% off at oldglory.com.
So to bring all of these threads together, what we are witnessing today is a paradigm shift in both capability and access. We have open source models that can hold 1 million tokens of context, reason through complex math and coding, and operate at near state-of-the-art levels.
And crucially, they're doing it at a price point 14 cents per million tokens. That makes widespread, always-on AI agents viable for everyday people.
Exactly.
You no longer need a massive corporate budget to have a digital assistant iterating and working for you around the clock.
And finally, this software revolution is actively accelerating a geopolitical hardware shift, proving that an independent, non-Western silicon ecosystem is currently capable of sustaining frontier AI development.
It is just a massive amount of change to absorb in a single morning. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time talking about how cheap this intelligence has become and how agents loop in the background to do work.
Right.
If ultra-smart, long-memory AI models are now practically free to run, what happens when personal AI agents become the default way we interact with the internet?
Oh, wow.
Like, what happens when you don't even download standard apps or scroll through social media feeds anymore because your personal AI just gathers, reads, and custom summarizes the entire web for you directly?
It dismantles the entire advertising and engagement business model the current internet is built on.
It really does. It's a whole new world out there. We're here to help at Snarful, so reach out on our website if you have any more questions.
That's a wrap on today's top stories. Remember, tech doesn't have to be complicated, and we're here to help connect the dots. If you've got questions or want to learn more, visit us at snarful.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.